started here. Again, thank you, Normal Theater, for coming out, for joining us for this screening of The Harder They Come, and for sticking around for the panel discussion. I have some friends and colleagues and fellow nerds here for us to kind of riff off the film a little bit. We'll have a discussion up here, and then we'll open up to questions for the audience if you have any. We've got Ms. Cianna Greaves, Dr. Stanford Carpenter, Professor Stacey Robinson. I'm going to let each of them kind of tell you a little bit about who they are and their first exposure to this film. So we can start with Cianna.
Hi, hello, good evening. My name is Cianna Greaves. I am a journalist currently working as a senior producer at WBEZ Chicago, where I work on talk shows. I've been in Chicago for about 5 years. I am originally from New York. I'm from the Bronx. My mom is actually from Jamaica, and my dad is from West Africa. The first time I saw this film, oh gosh, was definitely in the early 80s when I was a kid. Came from definitely a very religious household. So we weren't allowed to watch this movie. I remember watching this in like my aunt's apartment in the Bronx with like me and all my cousins in a room, and it really didn't really resonate with me. I'm telling Stanford that I recently watched it again for the first time since like I was a kid for this event, and it was really like seeing it for the first time, seeing it with new eyes and adults, and as an adult. It's really, really just such an amazing and beautiful film, and such an honest portrayal of the diversity of Jamaican culture. And yeah, so first impression, seeing it again this time was, I think the thing that blew me away the most were just the use of color and just how aesthetically stylish everyone was in this film. So yeah, that's really
Excellent, thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Dr. Stanford Carpenter. I am a cultural anthropologist, sometime comic creator, and a former archaeologist. And I bring that up because I did my early research actually in Jamaica. I actually saw this movie around the time when I was in college. I remember seeing this in the context of being really interested in what was happening with the anti-apartheid movement at the time, and then also some of the stuff around the first Intifada, and and then also the Troubles in Ireland. You know, all of this was happening around the same. All this was happening in the late, throughout the late '80s and early '90s, you know, I new to college, and that was when I first started getting into reggae, and then I just remember seeing this for the first time. I remember seeing it dating myself on VHS.
Not Betamax, VHS.
But yeah, I mean, what strikes me is, I'm thinking the first time I saw it on VHS, I just recently watched it on streaming and then seeing it here on the screen. And the difference between all three of those viewings, right? Especially in terms of like just the color and resolution. I mean, Cianna and I had a very similar reaction. We were talking about it during that movie. It's also, it's not just the colors in the background, but it's also setting the colors and the lighting to work on black skin. Was also really interesting. And then I also found the subplot, or not the subplot, but the whole plot around the music and the record industry, right? And seeing that being put forth is very much like one of the villains in the equation. I love it. I thought that was really interesting. It wasn't that many years later after I saw this for the first time that I actually went to Jamaica to do archaeological work, and I just remember base camping in Kingston and seeing that again, and then thinking about like that experience versus seeing the movie. It's just a really interesting contrast. The one thing that the movie doesn't convey, and I find that a lot of movies don't convey this very well, is the heat. You know? I mean, yeah, you can show people dripping wet, right? But ultimately, like, it's the oppressiveness of the heat, the way it makes walking and breathing harder. You know.
For Americans.
So, I'm going to stop going on. Stacey.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Stacey Robinson. I teach at UIUC. I teach graphic design and illustration. My first time seeing this film was 2 days ago in preparing for this panel discussion. And some of what I took away from the film, it's interesting, seeing it a second time. Of course, the more you see a film, the more you get out of it. And streaming it versus seeing it and seeing the closed captions, many of them are different watching them here. So I could understand more of what was said. The recording is different through this viewing as well. Some of the things that I took away that I found interesting was the invisible villain, which was America, right? And the history of exploitation of indigenous cultures and enslaved cultures that are now free but not free. And there's a lot of that in the movie. I think it's not just the drug trade, right? That the Jamaican culture cannot really capitalize on, but it's also how predatory the music industry is, right? And there are multiple layers of that. And then in a particular way, how we survive through praise and worship. Right, we like surviving the culture through hoping for a future that you really just have faith in, that you cannot quantify or qualify. This brought me back a lot to my childhood because this brings me back to the late 80s and early 90s and my club days and listening to dance hall. But there's so much, for me there's so much, I have more questions than I have like takeaways, you know? Yeah, I'll leave it there for now.
It's always a hallmark of a great piece of art, right? When you want to keep revisiting it, rewatching, etc. For me, the first time my exposure to this was through a big cinema nerd. And I also study fandom and subcultures. And so there's a documentary called Midnight Movies. And The Harder They Come is one of the sort of like big 10, if you will, sort of iconic midnight movies from the 70s. And like listening to each of your different stories and what you all resonate with, there are things that are individual. There's family history, there's music connections, there's scholarly connections. So we each bring and get something from this individually. Some of the things that they were talking about in the Midnight Movies study of this film is that, you know, this is something that this ran for 6 years to people from all over the place, right? And so why were so many people from so many different backgrounds and experiences drawn to this story? You know, what is sort of pan-cultural, pan-identity? What are the things that we can all pick up and go like, wow, we're rooting for Ivan, right? So what are some things in there that you feel like are just things that we can all grab a hold of and resonate with?
I was not rooting for Ivan.
Fair enough.
Ivan is a bad man.
Yeah.
I just wanted to actually piggyback on something that Stacey said, and when you're thinking about the impact of colonialism and imperialism, just really setting the scene a little bit for the film. Jamaica, you know, got its independence in 1962, so we are 10 years away from independence from colonial rule. is a very, very young nation. You can feel the tension. It is a culture of, again, incredible piety. It is a culture of, duckers and divers. It's a culture of a very spiritual Rastafarian culture. And all of those sections of society really don't mix very well at all, I will say. When we have the Bob Marley, when One Love comes out, 8 years later, something like that? This is after almost 10 years of civil war. So 1972, when this movie comes out, it is a tinderbox of tension, and it explodes between the labor and the PNP factions of government, where you have people, fighting in the street, supporting these different parties, because at the end of the day, people are poor, people are suffering. There are those who want to be completely free. There are those who want to maintain relationships with the crowd and so on and so forth. So there was this really great tension there, and I think the film does a really good job of showing that tension. But as I was saying, 10 years later when, Bob Marley's One Love comes out, it's an international hit. It's not a song about world peace. It's a song about peace in Jamaica and having all of these different political parties, these factions. Almost 1,000 people died unofficially. I think that number is definitely small compared to, I think the low estimate, who died in the Civil War. It really did cause a lot of damage to the society, the economy, a lot of which you can still see the scars of today. So I just thought that was really, really interesting, really naming that, when One Love came out, it was this big international hit, sort of an anthem for world peace. It was a song written by a Jamaican for Jamaicans.
One thing, as we talk about, America and colonialism, something that we had talked a little bit about while we were watching the movie, that I would highlight, also very much symbolizes this, is in the scene where the preacher goes into the car and he plays with the gun and he pulls the comic book to the side and then the Playboy magazine. That comic book is the Two-Gun Kid. And the Two-Gun Kid, the classic pose of the Two-Gun Kid, by Jack, I think it was Jack Kirby did it. It is this pose, and it's exactly the pose that the picture's in. So like what's interesting is even as he fashions himself as a rude boy, as an outlaw, he's fashioning himself literally in the image of an American comic book outlaw. Actually an outlaw hero, because Two-Gun Kid's kind of a hero.
And Django.
Yeah. And then you also had Django, but it's interesting that the ways in which he is remaking himself are built around American, very American depictions.
Well, and so the film that we see referenced, that was Django?
Yes.
Right, yeah, so when I was doing a little bit of research on rude boy culture and how so much of the rude boys were fashioning themselves after westerns, after spaghetti westerns, things like that. There's that sort of recursion. And I appreciate, Cianna, you bringing up the point that yes, Ivan is not a good person, right? And if you look at the trailer, the re-release trailer, it names him as an anti-hero. So he was based off of an actual real person, Ivanhoe Regan Martin, who was an outlaw in 1948. But there's that moment when he's chasing off Jose, and all of these young kids are following him, and there's all these people who don't want to turn him in. So it's the moral complexity and the folk hero stature. He's the protagonist, right? So that was a choice. And I'm seeing some nodding, so I'll just kind of throw that out there and let you riff.
Well, I mean, it's in some ways that's also Sweetback's Badass Song all over again. And then the recent attempt to remake this Queen and Slim, right? Harold, it's also, when it comes over here, it's Harold and Maude. This idea of a folk hero that becomes, where they're a bad guy, but the people love him.
And Sweetback was 2 years before this, I think, right? Yeah, so you have this kind of, cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah.
We're at the height, the beginning of it. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No, go push it in.
That's all right.
Please do.
Because my geekism is kicking in now, right? So, One of the things I love to do is I DJ. I like to spin and collect vinyl records. And since being a teenager, I've collected original hip hop samples from my nostalgia of hip hop. So the golden age, earlier years of hip hop, and collecting those original samples. So my ear perked when I heard one of the songs, 007, called Shantytown, on that special ed sample that for The Magnificent, right? So my geekism kicked in because I'm like, now this is also connecting me. And when you think about when this movie came out, this also came out at the same time as hip hop began, right? And hip hop culture comes out of Jamaica, comes out of that protest that Cianna was talking about, right? And it comes to the United States, it comes to the South Bronx, it goes to Brooklyn, and a lot of people say hip hop started in the South Bronx. A lot of people in Queens and other boroughs say that they had it before the South Bronx, though, those beginnings of that. But what's happening is this is happening at the same time, right? Blaxploitation is happening at this time. So, and I forgot that Jamaica had earned, won its independence 10 years before that. I forgot about that, right? There is all of this, right, that lack of that heat that you see, right? I was like, no, it's so much hotter. I've never been to Jamaica, but I've been to Florida, right? You know what I mean? And so there's so many layers of commentary and history that really you can't tell in the movie because it's happening just at this point of the release of this movie. And I find that fascinating. So we look 55 years later after this movie, there's all of this culture that we can add to this commentary that was happening at the moment of this, right? And I find that fascinating historically because this is the root of so much, and I was gonna say black culture, but really world culture, because the roots of hip hop have become global. These artists were not getting paid much for the songs that they were making in real time, right? But these songs culturally have a very, very strong significance. And I'll leave it there.
I just also want to say special ed's parents are Jamaican.
See what I'm saying? See, this is why you need the journal. That's right. That's right. Because I'm like,
I have notes. I'm also not being rude. I have notes. That's my
yeah, but this is great because I'm like, wait a minute. How did they know about this record? How am I learning about this record 30-something years after Special Ed's album comes out? And I always love that part of the album. Is that like at the end of that song, right? But then it's like he sampled this as a teenager, right? And I'm like, this was the culture that they knew. They were rooted in this. This was what his parents were living this. I'm learning of this. I feel like I'm connecting to hip hop history 35 or so years after I heard the sample. And it has a whole other context, right? Thank you for that. Now my geekism is like, I'm amped.
The other thing that this made me think of is the movie touches on it, and it's really hard to convey the differing perspectives and what it's like to be in a place where the colonizer and the colonized are on top of each other. And I say the colonizer and the colonized because those are two such different lives. And I think about that scene where he stumbles upon that woman who's reading, right? She's living the colonizer lifestyle, and you know that was actually one of my strongest memories from when I did that first set of archaeological digs in Jamaica. Was we were housed at the University of West Indies, and we were housed at the senior commons room, which is the most colonial setup I'd ever been in. I mean, it's like you're like guests of the president of the university, and if you are there, like students are not allowed there. They're only allowed there as workers, and no money is allowed to exchange hand on the ground. Yet you go in there and everything is provided for you. But like since we weren't members, we had to sign, and then that little receipt just went to the president of the university. And then, but we would never see anything beyond that. And it was like this weird moment where we're sitting around and we're like, oh, it's easier for us to get beer than it is to get water. Meanwhile, like during the days, we would actually go into the city.
You were at this is Mona campus, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then we'd go into Kingston, and it was like, and like you see like the struggle. Like everything is about trying to scrape together a couple of pennies, and then you go back home and you're sleeping in a place where you're like you just see that contrast. And then when we're out in the field out in Moortown, there was a whole other set of contrast. But that's something that this movie actually does do a pretty interesting job of capturing little bits of it, in little slices, right? When he's outside the hotel, we never see the inside of the hotel. We just see the valet and the cars, right? But it does have that feel when you're there, when you're like, and it's such a small number of square feet, right? That you really like you can walk from the land of the colonizer to the land of the colonized.
It is very much in our DNA, that hangover of colonization and
Yes.
British culture. The elitism, colorism is still very, unfortunately, very much part of our culture. I think on my grandmother's birth certificate, on my mother's birth certificate, it lists my grandmother's profession as a pauper.
Oh,
Like,
not a
you
pauper,
know,
but two P's.
a pauper. Yeah, absolutely, pauper. Like, who even talks like that, eh? I don't think that's really necessary to put on somebody's birth certificate, but that is, very much, unfortunately, a lot of, what Jamaican culture is and continues to be. Sadly.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the politics and the heart of not just a couple of songs, Jimmy Cliff songs here. I mean, like The Harder They Come, right? The entire song is a struggle, and a lot of work on reggae talks about all of these as being protest songs. Matter of fact, Jimmy Cliff, when he did the song Vietnam, Bob Dylan said that at the time that was one of the best protest songs he'd ever heard, right? And so, we hear a lot now about, well, music shouldn't be political, or should it, right? So let's talk, I guess, a little bit more about this core here of protest and politics.
Almost all music is political. That's the irony in all of this, right? Like even the attempts to be apolitical end up being political.
It doesn't really ever wash with me. It's always just a weird thing where like film should be political. Like since when it always is.
Yeah.
Art is inherently political, but for whatever reason, it's just fascinating that reggae just seems to provide such a great soundtrack to protest. Great Vietnam or what's happening in Jamaica. I think one of my personal favorite genres or eras of Caribbean music is actually from this period, 70s on into the 90s during, I'm not afraid of aging myself, during the anti-apartheid movement. There's some really good music out there. Really, really good music. And reggae was sort of, with obviously the struggle to free Nelson Mandela and the people of South Africa, reggae became this amazing connection. And we really did have a rare moment of unity across the African diaspora. And a lot of it centered around the music. There are protest songs from Jamaica, Trinidad, Martinique, some beautiful like Zouk and like French language songs from Haiti. I mean, it is really just a really wonderful era in music, and I implore all of you to do a little search on Spotify, look up, there's some really great mixes there. One of my favorites is called Reggae Mandela, and it's just a beautiful collection of some like the great songs spanning about like 30 years from that period.
I was thinking, black music has always been political. It's always been about survival. It's always been about escape through art, right? Jay-Z has a lyric where he says, all us blacks got is sports and entertainment until we're even, right? And it's, many of us want to escape into sports and entertainment because we know that is the thing that will get us prestige, right? That will allow us to escape. So I think about the most, murderous, exploitative, horrible messages of some contemporary music. And I think about how many artists want to make other songs. They want to talk about political issues. They want to talk about upliftment. But the record labels that have given them advances, they now are, many hip hop artists, for example, are, they're employees, right? They're not making a lot of money. They're actually in debt by the time the album comes out. And many of them, what I find interesting is, this is the thing that gets their family out the hood. This is the thing that allows them to take care of their friends. So they don't just free themselves and their families, but oftentimes their friends, right? And we can definitely have discussions around or do the ends justify the means, but I think even that is protest, right? I look at that as even protest. I don't justify it, right? But I do look at it as protest. And it's interesting. Ivan is not the good guy, but I do root for him, right? Because I see him as somebody who is, we don't, by the time Ivan gets to his mom, they have a conversation. His mom tells him not to go into the city, not to stay here, to go back to the country. She knows him. This behavior that we see in the movie is not new. Like, she knew him. I didn't catch that the first time I watched it, right? She knew him. So I think that when I look at Ivan, I see Ivan as someone who is a victim of the system trying to escape it, right? And you see how interconnected the music industry is, the drug industry is, the police, right? And America, right? Like the imperialism, that's a great word, imperialism through America. So I want Ivan to win, even though he's doing horrific things in the movie, because I look at him as somebody who doesn't know any other way but to escape through the fantasy. And the fantasy is a horrible fallacy.
I like the point that you made, but I have maybe just like a challenge, like a question. Like, 100%, it is a protest to use this art and this craft to better yourself, to better your family, to free yourself, as you said. Our music used to free nations.
Right, yeah.
Like, we're not doing that anymore. Like, this was music that literally freed a nation and rallied the world around the cause of a people. Like, Caribbean people are not subtle. They were like, go join the army.
I was going to say, most mainstream artists are not doing it now. A lot of more lesser mainstream
But we don't have a song. I complain to this all the time. Where is our song? We're like, oh, Trump is terrible, da da da. People like, we don't even have a song. But every time you open social media, these pop stars and rappers, they're at Milan and Paris at Fashion Week. You maybe write a song? You know what I mean? I think we've sort of forgotten the power of music and the power of our voice beyond enriching ourselves.
Well, we've also forgotten and overlooked a lot of the musicians that continued that tradition. I mean, I'm thinking Arrested Development. I'm thinking Diggable Planets. I'm thinking Michael Franti. I'm thinking Disposable Heroes of Hypocrisy. I mean, and the irony is a lot of them are still making music now. But we're not. But
they're not mainstream.
But they're not the ones who we put on a pedestal. And they become mainstream when we put them on a pedestal. I mean, I think what's interesting is that I mean, there are a lot of theories as to why, and part of it is that corporate culture does not want to invest in the revolution. So that's part of the problem. But my response to that is also, we can have the revolution without corporate backing.
100%. Especially in the movie, as we saw, it's the people who decide.
Yeah.
not the corporations. You can sink $1 million in an artist. If it's not popular in the dance hall,
Yeah.
you know, no one's gonna buy the record.
If I may, jump off of that, there's that moment earlier when the record label
Hilton.
thank you, is like, I make the hits. The people.
Right.
But then later on, the forces are put in motion where everybody's like, I don't know if this is popular, it can't be stopped now.
It's like, find that record.
Yeah, exactly. Find that record. You expect me not to print this picture, and of course then the clampdown has to come down harder. And that's, of course, and then you get there towards the end, this tension where, you know, survival and the interlocking systems of oppression are like, okay, we don't want to give Ivan up, right? And my kids need to eat. My kid is sick, right? And so they're all making, like this time around too, I was sort of struck again by Elsa is like, every game I play, I lose.
Underrated. She had some of the best lines of the film.
She got some ill quotables. I'm like, that's a whole movie. Like every game I play, I lose. I was like, at that moment, I wanted her backstory.
Everything. Yeah.
I was like, this is an integral part of the movie, and why does Elsa help him? What is it? Because I look at, so when this was really good in the second viewing. She's also surviving, right? She has this protector, this guardian, who you don't know if he's grooming her or not. You know, like you don't know. And they do a good job of making it really ambiguous. Like either he's too overprotective or he's way too, like whatever, something else.
You can't tell whether he's protecting her or his property.
Right, or his property, right? And the other guy, I'm blanking on his, the other guy that Ivan was working with.
Pedro.
No, not Pedro.
Jose?
Not Jose. The one he was working with at the church, in the yard, who takes his bike, right?
Oh, Longa.
Longa, thank you. I was like, thank you. He's like, he says it directly. He was like, if Pastor don't do it, I'm gonna do it, right? But she has a story too. And she is like, her parents died. She has no other way. And I don't know, I'm assuming that they are both around age 20 or something like that, right? And so she is just out of her teen years surviving and has no real other, like I don't know where her skill sets are. She goes out to get work and it's scarce, right? She leaves the pastor, the security that's not so secure, for Ivan and his pipe dream. And that is the hope. Like, this pipe dream will work. Of course, she's, you know, we might assume she's in love and those things too.
I saw something else as well, though. It is that leaving to be with Ivan was not leaving to be just to be with Ivan. It was to be part of a found family collective in Pedro and Pedro's son.
Yeah.
You know,
Interesting.
You know, and one thing that struck me was the casual brutality of the film. You know, it's like oh, they said I killed one cop. No, I killed 3.
Yeah.
And Elsa wasn't shocked. like last. I mean, I'm just assuming if I came home and said, oh, I killed 3 police officers, that my partner might be a little emotive about that, right? You know, and I think that that's one of the things that I find really interesting about it. And like the one person who shows a lot of emotion is actually Pedro's child. You know, in terms of like you can tell that he's still like going in and out of the hospital, grieving for his mother, right?
Yeah.
I mean, well, the other emotional scene was it Jose's girlfriend right before she got shot? But I don't think that counts. That's not the type of emotion I'm talking about, right? But when I as I looked at it, especially the third or fourth time, but realizing that like emotionally, everyone's relatively flat emotionally, as you have all of these crazy traumatic things happening around them, that only the child is really responding to the trauma.
Yeah, there's the
Oh.
Wait, what happened?
That's what the Brits have done to us.
I hear.
British
See, I was wondering, I thought that was just, well, for a lack of a better term, bad acting. Like, I just kind of chopped that up to everything is flat because they're not trained actors or whatever. I don't know if they were trained, but that's what I chopped that up to. I don't know, like, there could be another story.
I just this issue of like of extreme emotions, both negative and positive, right? There's the casual brutality of the corporal punishment, although you then get that brief moment afterwards where Elsa's comforting Ivan, and then of course he has the flashback before shooting the police officer, but it kind of comes and goes, right?
Yeah.
But there's also around the kid, this made me think of it, there's also that beautiful scene when they're all at the beach, like some of the few moments of just pure joy.
Yeah.
And again, the kid is at the center of that. One thing that,
I also,
I'm sorry,
before you continue, I also find it interesting that Ivan cannot swim with the others, right? Because he's hurt, right? But for me, like the separation of them, if this movie were to go on, those other three would have been a family, right? Like I saw more connection, emotional connection that easily translated to me as romantic or we will take it, because there was a particular type of, I'm going to use the word love and you know, in kind of a, you know, in lack of a better term, between those three without Ivan.
I'm sorry, we're saying Pedro, Elsa, and Pedro's son.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, right? They have more of a connection than I ever saw between Elsa and Ivan.
so allow me to build off of that with a quote that the director Hensel was talking about, not directly to this, but I think it might help a little bit, at least the way I understand it. He said one of the key themes in this was, the two key themes, can the little man get through, right? And when he was thinking particularly about the character of Ivan, he saw Ivan as being sort of, it's the dream, right? We said earlier the dream, like, Ivan is willing to die for that, right? So yes, he could have the family unit, but that's not what he wants. He wants the fame, he wants the pie in the sky, as he even says in his lyrics, whereas Pedro, for example, is like, I want to take care of my kid, right? So their interests are not the same as the sort of, I guess, perhaps the folk hero dream that Ivan is into. So maybe that's a separation too.
But also throughout, pretty much all the references to children, or where adults are making references to their relationship to children, is all in the context of struggle. Like, and not just struggling, but struggling to be parents, struggling to provide as parents. Like, even when we see, like, that scene towards the end where we see the drug dealers talking about whether or not to rat out Ivan, right? It's like, I can't feed my kid. I can't do this for my kid, right? And then you see Pedro struggling to figure out what to do with his son, whose mom, we never saw the mom. She dies off camera, right? But it's like struggling to figure out what, and you can see, and it's helplessness. And even Ivan's mom, right? She's helpless to point her. You can sense there's a sense of helplessness in terms of her being able to point her son in the right direction, right? Of course, if he went in the right direction, we wouldn't have had a movie. But the point is, it's like what I also was seeing throughout was just this almost a crisis in parenthood.
There's also a very cruel irony to the fact that Ivan is the one who lost his wife violently at the hands of police, because when, Pedro, because when Ivan shows him the gun and goes, I'm thinking of buying this gun, Pedro's like, why, we could kill somebody? Like, absolutely not. It's very, very gentle, it strikes me as nonviolent. He's trying to be a good father, he's trying to provide for his family. And, the gun at this time is very new to Jamaican society, Jamaican culture. We see a lot of influx of weapons as the Civil War progresses, but this is a time when, you see guns on screen, but it is fairly new to Jamaican society.
Another thing that I found interesting about Ivan is that when he connects with his mother, she asks him for the mango. Like, the mango was the thing, that was the thing, like the gift he was gonna give her, right? We don't see him with his other belongings until he gets off the bus and then he gets robbed, right?
And they steal the mango.
And they steal the mango. But what I found interesting, he did not tell her, like he lied to her about the mango, which, you know, I could definitely spend some time thinking about, talking about. But one of the things I found interesting is, he said, you know, your mom died, you know, you couldn't go to her funeral, she's already buried. Was there any money, right? Because coming down to it, did mama leave me anything? There was something that happened, I noticed it the first time, and I noticed it the second time. He was reluctant to give her the money. He was like, no, not much is left. And then when she follows up with the question, you know, do you have any? She's like, then he goes into his pocket and pulls it out. But then he even makes a face while doing that. I noticed that. He was not gonna give his mother, his grandmother's money. Ivan is a dirty, Ivan is dirty from the beginning, right? And I think that you can get lost in how beautiful his voice is, right? As Jimmy Cliff, like, his voice is beautiful. I keep singing that song. The harder they come, you know, I'm tearing it up, right? But it's beautiful, and when you hear it repeated, right, it resonates differently every time you hear it. But the beauty of that distracts you from how dirty Ivan really is from the very beginning.
I mean, I'll be honest, I wasn't rooting for Ivan either, but I'll challenge you. Maybe Ivan wasn't dirty. Maybe that's how bad the system was.
Yeah.
And I think that, and I go back to what I was saying earlier about grappling with the life of the colonizer versus the life of the colonized, especially when they're on top of each other. You know, one existence where, like, you don't even show money, but you still have things, and the other being an existence where, like, you're struggling to get every penny. You know, and that's, I'll be honest, it's like I picked up on what you said at the beginning, but by the time we got to the point where I saw him just struggling, everyone's talking about struggling over small amounts, I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I mean, I saw, like, a people that were just under constant pressure and stress and tension, and not knowing how they were going to make it to the next moment.
And I also think there's another kind of signifier in the movie too, and it's the white cars. There were a number of white cars in the movie.
Yes.
And, you know, white represents purity. These vehicles are I think one of them was a Mercedes, right? I can't remember what the other ones were. The interior of the cars were white, right? It was these ideas of this aspiration for whiteness and purity and prestige was a constant reminder through which was interesting, these vehicles of transport and escape, right? That he couldn't even drive, right? Even if he could escape, he couldn't escape, right?
Couldn't drive, couldn't swim.
Couldn't drive, couldn't swim. I'm like, and I was thinking, I was like, damn, what can you do?
Ride without a helmet.
You can sing.
Huh?
He
He could sing, and that was his only
sing.
thing, right? He couldn't even go and get work. He didn't have any of those skills either. He couldn't paint, he wasn't a carpenter, he couldn't pour concrete, he couldn't do any of those things, and he couldn't even lie well. Right? And he could, like, you know, he tried to be honest, but I think instead of lying to your mom, that might have been the time to lie.
I want to take a pause real briefly and make sure the audience, if they have some questions they'd like to throw out and have an opportunity. Otherwise, I'm sure we could certainly find more. But any thoughts from the audience?
If not, I can sing The Harder They Come again.
Okay.
All right.
Well, one thing that I noticed, I know the soundtrack long before I knew about the movie, or before I'd seen the movie. song that I always really loved was Many Rivers to Cross. And I was sad that it took such a short part of the movie, you know, because it's such a beautiful song and it's a long song. It only had just 2 little parts. But I sort of feel like the thing that you're talking about, where you couldn't do these things, it comes back to that song, because it is about being frustrated and beaten down, and you know, the songs that they play throughout the movie, so much were about, you know, they were sort of like, well, I was going to say about celebration, but not really. They're like high tempo and you know, danceable, whereas Many Rivers to Cross is not. And I guess that's just what you said brought up for me was that particular song, and how it was just a tiny little part of it.
Was that the scene when he was on the bike with Elsa?
No. That was when he was heading over to the woman who was living her colonial best life.
Where he was getting splashed by the construction.
Oh,
And he had gone to the construction site and was like, look, I will do what you need me to do, right? And there were several people, like he's the protagonist, so we see him get turned away. But the person after him was like, I told you to go away yesterday, I'm gonna tell you to go away now. And so
it literally stops when he goes through the gate. The gate to go up to ask the woman for work and for money. That's when the music stops.
And I was struck this time too, like the frustration where he's like, you know, I can do it. He names these things, and she says no, and then he's like, well, fine, can I have 10 cents? And she's like, all you people can do is, you know, all you young folks can do is ask for money. And I'm like, he just offered a litany of things he could do for you, right? And she still is like, just, you know, and then maybe that's part of that class intersectionality tension.
Yeah, I thought that was, I have a service that does this. My husband takes the car downtown to get it washed, right? We have a service that tends our yard, right? There's these constant things of, we have prestige, we can hire people.
Close the gate.
Huh?
Close the gate. Who left the gate open?
Close the gate, you left it. How'd you get in here?
But she never mentions paying for anything. She mentions having a service, but she doesn't mention paying for it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't get past that because
She
it's
says
like,
her husband does it.
her husband takes care of it. Like that's the thing. It's like they have all the things, and there's no reference to like how it comes, how it appears, and then we see this other place where the people are making the things and they can't have anything.
And conversations about money dominate. They're
Right.
not shy about money. $10, $15, $5.
Yeah.
I can't pay for this. I can't pay for that. I need this. You see large sums of money changing hands.
Right. That they don't get to touch, but they keep making stuff and they don't have shit. I mean, stuff.
One of the things that I was struck by too, and we've talked about this off panel as well, but you know, this was an independent film. It was made by Jamaicans for Jamaicans about Jamaica, right? Like that was the focus, and one of the things that I think when Perry Hensel, the director, was interviewed later in life, why he was so surprised at how popular this film and had become in the U.S., in the U.K., was that wasn't his primary audience. He had this really wonderful quote in the Midnight Movies documentary. Gotta get it right. There is no greater impact you will have than showing a society itself on the screen for the first time. That sits with me, and we're seeing all of the complexity in this film, right? The class struggles, the frustrations. So I guess I just want to kind of throw that out there and see what resonates with you with that quote.
Repeat the quote again.
There is no greater impact you will have than showing a society itself on the screen for the first time.
I mean, seeing this back as an adult now for the first time, it was just like very cool people. Everybody looked great. The music was amazing. I mean, the fashions were fantastic. Jose, for the win. Every outfit was a homage. I mean, I know it's outspoken, but you know, even though you know these were people who were in the pits of hell and dealing with poverty, there is a lot of emphasis put on how you present yourself to the world. and taking pride in the way that you look, and being clean, and being, you know, tidy, being fashion forward, which is something that Jamaican people do very, very well. But I mean, I was just very struck by just how beautiful, not just, you know, the countryside, just how beautiful Jamaicans were. You can tell that the person who made this film and did the cinematography was Jamaican. They really, the attention to detail, from the streets to the church was just so incredibly accurate. You saw so many, every kind of Jamaican person that there was. We had a Chinese Jamaican person in the film as well. We had South Asian Jamaicans. The director herself is a white British Jamaican as well. So it was nice to see that diversity. And I really can't think of a more accurate representation of Jamaican culture really on film if I try and think. Like, I can't.
I just keep thinking the color yellow. The way they used yellow in that movie was amazing. I mean, and the way they made the color yellow work. It was always in these moments where it was providing the light for the scene. And even in the end, like his signature outfit in the end was that black lawn sleeve T-shirt with the yellow star, right? And there was just something about what they were doing with color that struck me as very intentional and something that really guided me through.
You asked that you talked about representation and how making a culture feel particular way, seeing that culture on the screen. I was only born in 1972, right? But you know, when I remember when Black Panther came out, the Marvel cinema Black Panther came to the theaters, there was this video that went viral. And it was a young man he was in the theater looking at the Black Panther poster. And he's talking to the camera. He's like, this is how y'all feel every day? Because he was looking at pride. He was like, oh my God, not only are we on screen, but it's a positive depiction of us, you know. He's like, and he's really talking to white people. I don't know if he says that, but we all know who he's talking to. He was like, this is how y'all feel? Y'all feel this way every day? He says, I would love this country too. That's a powerful, powerful statement about what representation. If you see yourself represented every single day, in every single way, the hero, the villain, get all the girls, all the guys, sometimes all of them at the same time. The entire world loves you, right? How affirming is that? Now, I've never been white. Next week I'll be 54 years old.
Okay.
I've never.
Next week. That's where we're going. What's happening next week?
If I am, I'm documenting everything. I'm gonna let everybody know. And next week I will be 54. I've not been white one day in my life. I've never experienced that, right? But I've had conversations with some of my white friends about that type of thing, seeing themselves all the time. The news reflects you. The movies reflect you. Cartoons reflect you. Like, you never turn on the TV. Whenever you turn on the TV, you see yourself immediately. Or, you know, so when I look at, and I asked them, I was like, why do white people have depression and low self-esteem? I don't understand that, right? And they would explain, you know, even in there explaining to me about how valid it is, because it is valid, like you see it happening, right? So it's valid. But it's hard for me to really I want to say appreciate or empathize or sympathize, because for me, I think if every story or if I had a diversity of stories that I could go to that would represent me positively, and they were not hard to find, the future depicts me, so I never, when I think of particular things, like if I say the word doctor, right? When I say the word doctor, in our head, we automatically, by default, think white male physician, right? So everything is structured around that. So I find that, like, when we talk about representation, is seeing that on screen, how powerful. I don't come from a Jamaican culture, right? So I don't understand what this meant for what this means for Jamaicans. But I know that when I see certain depictions on screen that reflect my interest, how it empowers me in a very particular way to be the type of human I want to be the type of father I want to be the type of husband I want to be, the type of artist, the type of person that will leave a particular legacy for the future. And I don't think that comes every day for us. I'll leave it there.
And I think, I'm sorry, just to say one thing, I think what I also want to glom onto is the idea of affirmation and positive affirmation.
Yeah.
Going back to the film, it is not something that I had from drum. His mom was like, well, you can just go back to the countryside because you're not going to make it here. The only thing here for you is a life of crime. And just sort of being broken. You're not going to be a successful singer. You're not a good provider. You're not good at this. You're not good at that. To the point that he just wanted affirmation.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether it was for his natural gifts
Yeah.
or if it was notoriety, which is really, really sad. And I think of, you know, the late, great Jesse Jackson and, you know, the coverage for the past few weeks with, you know, just me watching a lot of tape and remember the Keep Hope Alive speech saying that, you know, this was the 1988 Democratic Convention in San Francisco, was that one in? Or I think the 88 one was in San Francisco. And it was very clear that Dukakis was going to win. And he starts the speech and you can see there's a lot of apathy, like, all right, this guy's he's not our guy, just let him talk, whatever. But by the end, when he's saying, like, I knew what it was like to not have a name, to be a nobody. I didn't grow up with journalists outside my door. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody knew who my mother was. Like, I know what that feels like. It hurts, it's painful when people don't believe in you, when you feel like a nobody. And it is a symptom of, obviously, a society that is, you know, racially, you know, just so, I've lost my words, but, you know, fucked up, but, you know, also, universally, it is a symptom of growing up in poverty. It is a symptom of growing up in poverty.
You mean the lack of affirmation?
The lack of affirmation, especially that we give to our children. You know, my mother grew up in Jamaica in poverty, like poor. Like she would tell us these stories, and I'd be like, "Oh my God, you were so poor, like, poor." And it takes a toll on you. There is a psychology of poverty that, you know, it's not just about the things that you can buy and provide and the tangible goods. There is a psychology of poverty that we don't talk about enough, and that is also something that needs to be healed.
So there's so many complex layers to that, right? And when you think of like this, you know, I know that all of us are storytellers in our own ways, in our own mediums, and you know, we each have our own experiences, our own identities, but and it helps to have characters who reflect those, and we can also consume stories with characters who don't share those and still connect with something that's similar, right? And so this issue of affirmation and self-esteem, you know, a lot of psychologists, what, you know, we would originally call humanists, now we might call positive psychologists, talk about the sort of just general desire that we have, all of us have, for esteem. We find it in different ways. There are different social structural elements that either help make it easier on us to get that or make it harder. But these are things that we can all kind of connect through. So, you know, we watch Ivan's struggles and we can probably agree that he went about these things in ways that perhaps one should not. I'll put should in quotes. I'll put should in quotes because there are structural issues, but I think there's also this issue where it's like, I can maybe understand, like, I want someone to believe in me, right? You know, I mean, even Elsa, he even asked her, like, what, you don't believe that I can do this? So, That's sort of what I'm taking away. I'm also being mindful of the time. You all have travels. The nice folks at the theater have to clean up. So what I want to do here is kind of wrap up and give each of you a chance to kind of tell the audience, if you have an online presence, where they can find you, and any other parting words. So we'll start with Stacey.
You can find me at staceyrobinson.com, STACEY, Stacey A. Robinson is my handle for most social media, mostly Instagram and my website. I'm not on too many other things. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Not too many other things.
I'm pretty easy to find on social media. Just put Stanford and Carpenter together. There are lots of Stanfords and lots of Carpenters, but if you put them together, pretty much all that shows up. And if that's not and for the ones where that's not one of my aliases, the other would be SW Carpenter. SW and then Carpenter.
Oh God, I'm getting older, boy. LinkedIn. Or you can go to wbez.org. My name is Cianna Greaves, C-I-A-N-N-A. The last name is Greaves, G-R-E-A, V as in Victor, E-S as in Sam. You can find my work on the great show that I do, and support your local public radio station, guys.
Right.
Good folks at WGLT. Oh, I'm a producer on 2 talk shows, Say More with Mary Dixon and Patrick Smith, and In the Loop with host Ann Simons.
And then I'm Dr. Wesselmann, psychology professor here at Illinois State University. You can find on that website, you can find my YouTube page, Digital Gold Method Productions, where I have nerdy conversations with folks here live, as well as virtually. Eventually this panel will show up on the website when I get to that point. Let's see here. I also want to give special shout outs to the Normal Theater for providing us this space.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I want to thank again Dr. Alicia Hund in the Department of Psychology, Colby Jennings, who's the chair of the School of Creative Technology, for both providing some financial support for me to bring my wonderful guests here. I want to thank my wonderful friends and colleagues for sharing this time with me and geeking out. Hope we can do it again sometime.
Absolutely, thank you for having me here.
And last but certainly not least, thank you all for coming out, for supporting this space, and for coming out early. So please, we look forward to seeing you all again sometime. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.